La mostra che inauguriamo oggi è una mostra personale di Caroline Joseph, che è un'artista già conosciuta per chi segue le mostre da me curate. Lo scorso anno è venuta in residenza e con una mostra personale presso il mio spazio espositivo a Gualdo Tadino, e quest'anno torna con una installazione site specific, pensata appositamente per Gubbio e per il Centro Culturale Elsa Morante di Roma. In realtà diciamo, l'idea è quella di rappresentare un enorme libro d'artista con diverse pagine, all'interno di ogni pagina ovviamente uno dei personaggi che fanno parte di questa ricerca che riguarda le donne, le cosiddette donne illustri italiane. È stata una ricerca che lei ha condotto sulla scia dell'Elsa Morante. Perché? Perché l'idea era quella di creare appunto una mostra itinerante che dopo l'appuntamento con Gubbio potesse trasferirsi a Roma, quindi in questo centro culturale che è anche sede di una rinomata biblioteca della Laurentina, e quindi c'era questa necessità di creare una sorta di fil rouge tra la mostra di Gubbio e quella di Roma. Prima di continuare, per non dimenticarmene anche, vorrei ringraziare l'ambasciata dell'Australia che ha patrocinato la mostra e il nono municipio di Roma che ha creduto in questo progetto, tanto appunto da ospitare assieme alle biblioteche di Roma la seconda parte della mostra. Caroline ha realizzato uno studio su quella che è stata la figura femminile a partire dal Rinascimento fino ai giorni non proprio contemporanei a noi, ma quasi. Quindi ha recuperato delle figure di donna che si sono da un lato mosse per, sembra strano, ma nel Seicento c'era già come Lucrezia Marinelli o come altre figure che si sono battute per i diritti delle donne. E quindi la sua bravura nell'evidenziare come nonostante fino a qualche secolo fa, insomma, la figura femminile che si occupava di cultura era veramente poco nota, evidenziare quelle figure che hanno lavorato affinché noi oggi potessimo parlare di diritti femminili. Peraltro credo che qua si andrebbe ad aprire un tema veramente da un lato scottante, dall'altro un tema che non voglio in alcun modo strumentalizzare al fine di questa mostra, però il fatto di dare maggiore libertà alla figura femminile, rispettandone anche quelli che sono i pensieri e la cultura e quindi anche le tradizioni. Comunque sia, due le figure di Elsa Morante per il discorso di qui sopra e le altre Artemisia Gentileschi, quindi artista che tutti conosciamo, artista del Seicento che è stata violentata durante le lezioni di pittura che prendeva dal Tassi, tutto quello che ne è conseguito, la negazione della violenza da parte del Tassi, e poi una figura che io adoro tra quelle presenti, che è lo spirito ribelle. Lo spirito ribelle, il tema è proprio questo, cioè le figure, le illustri donne italiane e gli spiriti che le hanno mosse, questa è la traduzione dal titolo in inglese. Quindi, come a dire che c'è quel qualcosa innato o superiore, perché qui si parla anche di spirito creativo, ma c'è anche la figura, ad esempio, della Vergine, che non poteva rimanere al di fuori di questo contesto. Quindi adesso io lascerei la parola a Caroline, pregandola di spiegare in che modo è nata questa idea e magari soffermandosi sulle singole figure, sui singoli personaggi. Ricordo che la mostra rimane aperta fino a fine mese.
First of all, I feel very privileged and honored to be introduced to give an exhibition in this wonderful 13th century church in Italy. So this is very, very special. After Adelinda had suggested this, I looked at Santa Maria, una chiesa di Santa Maria, and I began to remember all the connections I'd had with Catholic education, Catholic church, and tutoring nuns. And I'm not a Catholic, but I have great regard for some people I met, and my mother too had a very dear friend who was from Italy. In 1967 I went to Perugia to study Italian, ma ho dimenticato tutto. Sorry. Anyway, Santa Maria was, how do I express that spirit of Santa Maria? And I remembered first an image by one of our indigenous artists, and I went to the gallery to have a look at a very big work, not like this, but some element of it that had really stayed with me. And so I did this sort of semi-impressionistic. I wanted to have the sense of not form and spirit and energy and of Santa Maria as the nurturer, as the mother. And then I was also grateful to a number of people. I then went to Judy Chicago's work, who was an American artist. She's now 84 years older than I am, and still working around the world, giving talks and so on, I understand. But her work, for me as an art student in the early 80s, she did it in 1970, the mid-70s, where she started out on a project to honor women around the globe from many cultures by doing sculptural pieces and so on. But gradually more and more women came to help her, so that over 5 years she had 400 women helping her, and they made a huge installation which was called The Dinner Party, and I've seen it. It's in the Brooklyn Museum of Women's Art, and it's huge, and each is a table setting for one woman particular, and then many, many other women. And they researched, I think about 10 women researched 999 women and made little stories about them. And out of that I then sort of culled some, and then I started to do the spirit figures as a kind of warm-up into what were some of these women. And so the contemplative spirit, the rebel spirit who doesn't accept necessarily the status quo, and who therefore as an artist can invent new ways and new pathways for other people. The dancer, who I have a great feeling for. And the dancer is the one who responds to energy and wind and weather and other human beings or inanimate objects, anything at all. And I've had quite a lot to do with dance in my life, and you know, would have loved to be a dancer. But so which other spirit figures have I got here? Then I think that's the spirit figures, yeah. And so then we return to how these women who are sort of like beacons of extraordinary strength, often in adversity. So, but first with Maria, Montessori, and the process for a 20th century person who was the first woman university graduate in Italy in medicine, amazing, 1896, and she was assigned then to the most severely handicapped children in a hospital. And what she discovered was that these people who she was told were unable to be educated could learn. And I worked for more than 40 years as an educator and designing courses for all sorts of people across Australia, across a state and across an archdiocese and so on, working in innovation. Maria Montessori was somebody who touched me very deeply because she had a regard for the poor and for the intellectually handicapped, and she knew from using very practical methods that these people could learn. And she was, I think, quite an extraordinary person. She died in 1952. But there are schools of hers all around the world, including Australia. Then Adelinda asked me, would you like to include Elsa Moranti? And I hadn't heard of Elsa Moranti, but then I looked her up and I began to read her book, La Storia, and I was blown away. I thought, this is the most wonderful writer. And two of my dear friends knew her work very well and also talked to me about her. And then I read her biography in English by Lily Tuck, and I learnt a lot more about this extraordinary woman who, incidentally, her mother used Montessori's methods in her teaching as a school teacher. And Elsa Moranti was fiercely intelligent. She came top in everything in her school. She went to university, left home, dropped out of university, but she would write other people's dissertations if they were too lazy to write them. So she would do it for them. She married Alberto Moravia. It was a very up and down kind of relationship, intense and passionate and argumentative and so on. And through him met a lot of the intellectuals, Pasolini and Italo Calvino, filmmakers and writers and poets. So then we come to the contemplative spirit, which I thought related quite a lot to Lucretia Maranella. And her dates are 1571 to 1653. She lived a very long life for that century. She didn't die until she was 82 years old. Now, I think this relates to the fact, and most of these women had some help from the men in their lives in these early days. So Lucretia Maranella's parents were physicians, and she was not forced to go into marriage by anybody. She chose her partner in marriage, and it was a very happy union, I think. But she had a lot of time to write, and she wrote a lot. And then the interesting thing for me was that she was aware of Moderata Fonti's work. And Moderata Fonti's lived 1555 to 1592, so they kind of overlapped. And Lucretia Maranella had written a book about the defects, the superiority of men and the defects, the superiority of women and the defects of men. But she was very well aware of Moderata Fonti's book, which was written after Moderata died, published, but she did this in a different way. This is Moderata's book, which the University of Chicago has now printed, but her book also went around the world talking about marvelous women, whereas Moderata did a different thing. She brought together 8 women with different kinds of relationships with men, where they come together and they talk to each other and argue with each other like a play, a real conversation. Now, Moderata's history was that both her parents died when she was 1 year old. And her brother, she had an older brother, Leonardo. They were taken in by her grandparents. Her grandfather had a library. She was not educated, as women of that day were not educated, but because she had these associations, she then went into a convent a bit later with her brother, and from him she learnt things that he was taught. She learnt the lute, the harpsichord, she wrote. And she wrote The Merits of Women in 1600. It was published by her uncle, who she went to live with later. And she was married to a lawyer, and it was a very good union. But she died after childbirth, which a lot of women did. This woman, Lucretia Maranella, with 2 parents who were physicians, married a physician. Her father had written about novels about women's health and well-being and hygiene, and she lived to 82. She died of something called the quartan fever, but other women had not so much luck with it. And then we go to the dancer, Lucretia Borgia, and everybody grins when you say her name because they know the stories. But from the research people that I read, there is no historical evidence to say that Lucretia Borgia ever poisoned, murdered, any of that. She was, in fact, the daughter of Rodrigo. Yes, but he was cardinal when she was conceived with one of his mistresses, and then later he became Alexander VI, the Pope. But she was used as a political pawn in his political ambitions towards the Vatican. And so because she was beautiful, charming, intelligent, and very clever at administrating church business, and then, so he married her off to a couple of important people. Those marriages didn't last. The third marriage was a happy union, and she died after having her 10th child. And the Duke of Ferrara, who was her husband, I think mourned her. But yeah, so we move on to, this is a second portrait of Elsa Moranti, which seemed to emerge because this is a different perspective on Elsa. This is the defiant one who would brook no authority. And there she is, of course, with the cat again, and she loved and depicted cats and dogs and small children in her book with such alarming insight, I guess, that is really very moving. So then we have, last but not least, Artemisia Gentileschi, which I've just done a little gesture to my own painting process, but picked up on her own self-portrait to depict her. And her story is, again, of somebody who, her mother died when she was 12. Her father was a famous artist, as most people will know, And he employed one of his colleagues to teach her perspective. And this man raped her. And her father, and this is like her dates are 1593 to 1656. So she was just 17 when that happened. Her father took up the case and took her to court. Now, I read different versions of what happened, but it seemed that either the man got off freely, or he was exiled from the city, or he spent a short time in prison, whatever. She was tortured to make sure she was telling the truth. She held to her story, but of course she kept painting. She was married off by her father and she went to another city to escape the scandal and gossip. But she kept painting and she got some very important commissions. She was accepted into the Design Academy, which was very unusual. And she had Philip of Spain gave her a commission. I think she went to England as well. She became a very important artist, and she did, of course, warrior women who succeeded and, you know, were strong in spite of very difficult life. So I had a lot of regard for her. I think the only other thing I wanted to talk about, I don't know how much time there is, but the difficulty of, I've been doing portraits for a year or two of different people I know and love or regard in some way very much. And it is a different thing to try to do a portrait of somebody who lived 400 years ago and you don't have any living, breathing sense of that person. And particularly, you're trying to step into who they might be through, in her case, through her own painting, Elsa through her writing, Lucretia Borgia, so many different versions. And this I took from another artist because I loved the idea of her. Well, it turned out quite differently because in my picture she's looking very uneasy with the hand that's coming to get her, because I think she was used to attract men, seduce, whatever. And Moderata Fonti was only engravings of her in the 1600s. So she was quite a quiet person, but intensely intelligent. So the nuns displayed her as a prodigy because she could remember word for word a whole sermon directly after it, word for word. And then she could write, you know, madrigals and plays and all sorts of things. So, but this one too, it was quite dead, what I'm looking at, the engraving. And then it was almost like she painted herself, you know, she's a bit of a... So I'm just talking about those, and of course with Maria and with Elsa, I could work from photographs. And of course they turn out completely differently. But I also wanted to mention the creative spirit, the inner creative spirit. And that is what is important for all artists, as well as many other people, filmmakers, photographers, architects, visual artists, sculptors, and so on. But it may derive energy from nature. And of course, the word spirit comes from the word spiritus, meaning breath. So we are inspired by certain people, objects, nature, whatever. And so this is an abstract, the creative spirit, the inner creative spirit that we want.
Un'altra bella iniziativa che questa splendida chiesa di Santa Maria Nuova ospita grazie all'attività dell'associazione culturale La Medusa. Qui abbiamo anche la possibilità di avere una presenza internazionale che sicuramente si abbina perfettamente a quello che è questo ambiente antico e affrescato in maniera splendida, portando quello che sono i tempi moderni. Cioè, la nostra amministrazione è molto contenta di queste attività, di questo portare il contemporaneo nella storia, nella nostra storia, e vorremmo sempre di più sostenere questo tipo di iniziative.
Ci troviamo all'interno della chiesa di Santa Maria Nuova, grazie anche al contributo, alla partecipazione, al sostegno della diocesi di Gubbio, che sempre sostiene le nostre iniziative. L'Associazione Culturale La Medusa vive anche e soprattutto di collaborazioni con enti, associazioni e curatori. Quest'oggi apriamo la mostra di Caroline, curata da Adelinda Allegretti, ed è una collaborazione che va avanti ormai da alcuni anni. Adelinda ha la sua galleria a Gualdo Tadino, ma tante sono le sue attività nel corso dell'anno in Italia e all'estero, e dobbiamo ringraziarla proprio perché riesce a portare anche da noi a Gubbio, grazie a questa sinergia che si è instaurata ormai da qualche anno, artisti di calibro pregevole e soprattutto particolari. Apriamo appunto questa mostra con un'installazione all'interno di questa chiesa monumentale che rimarrà aperta al pubblico per tutto il mese di giugno, e quindi invitiamo tutti quanti a venirla a visitare.